40th anniversary retrospective. Oh my God, whoever would have thought we would get this far? No, none of the founders did. And that was certainly the way to bet back in 1983 and 84 when Baen Books was first conceived. My name is Toni Weisskopf. I am the current publisher, editor-in-chief, and art director of Baen Books. Yay! So welcome. We have unearthed a time capsule that was totally done about 10 or 15 minutes ago.
Very short memory.
Bill, would you do the honors and unlock it? I don't actually trust the employees to have not put the anthrax powder in there. And you may be seeing a new publisher next year. So.
Oh, and there would be one of the employees who forgot the location, so they're in there somewhere.
So, all right. So, a little bit of the history of Baen. How many people here were alive in 1984? All right, many of you. Okay. Well, I was alive too, and I was not actually yet working for Baen. I didn't come to Baen until 1987, so I haven't yet. So I've been working there for a while. It was my first job out of college, and I'm just not that creative, so I just stayed. Thank you. I love him. No, it was. I landed in the right place the first time. I just got very, very lucky. Jim Baen was not a science fiction fan, but he was a science fiction reader, and he had an interesting career before he came to Baen. He was in the Army for a couple of years as a teenager, and then ended up in the Village in New York City at the time of Bob Dylan, and the folk. The folk rise there. He was he was a barker for some of the smaller and less important folk emporiums, which involved standing out on the street and saying, "Hey, come in, beautiful ladies, you will love it." Also, men with guitars, but beautiful ladies, right? The first taste is free. So he learned a lot. He learned a lot doing that. Spent a couple of years pursuing a degree in philosophy, decided that he wanted to make money more, and started his publishing career in the mailroom of Ace Books. He was able to work his way up as a copywriter, mostly for romances, some of which Jim was not a hoarder. I am a hoarder, but Jim was not a hoarder. He kept very few things, but he did keep the first book cover that he had ever written copy for that he saw published. Something called Whispering Pines, I believe it was. So, yes, Gothic romance, lovely. Tom Doherty was also working at Ace at the time, and saw his potential. But he went from a lowly editorial assistant in the romance department at Ace over to Galaxy magazine, where Ben and Bill are like, yes, this is when we first noticed Jim Baen. He was the managing editor at Galaxy after Jody Lynn Nye, who was one of the greatest science fiction editors of all time. She was the one who brought science fiction into the mainstream. Died too soon, but he followed in her footsteps, became editor of Galaxy at a time when it looked like it was going under. The previous editor was horrible, didn't pay the authors, chose bad stories, rejected good stories, and Jim brought it back. At that point, he was able to go back to Ace as a science fiction editor. He and Tom Doherty worked at Ace together, and when Tom split off to start his own publishing company, he took Jim with him. Jim bought the first 163 books at Tor, and then Simon & Schuster came calling. There's a long and involved story that we may or may not get into about how Baen came to be, but long story short, Rather than become an imprint at Simon & Schuster that Jim would lead, Jim said, I would rather own my own company. Let's set me up as an independent publisher. You guys can distribute what it is that we do. And they said, yes. And Jim was like, wow, I didn't actually think you would say yes, but okay, let's totally do this.
He was in shock.
He was, but it worked. For his part, Tom was generous enough to let Jim out of his contract to establish a. No, he didn't. No, Tom did not invest $1 in Baen, but he did release Jim from his contract, and that was a generous thing to do, and he has been recompensed greatly since then. There was a money guy, Richard Gallen, who had started many publishing companies and was helpful in starting Baen as well, and was in creating the relationship between Baen and Simon & Schuster. In the first year, we published Tim Zahn. 40 years later, we are still publishing Tim Zahn. In the first year, we had a David Mattingly cover. 40 years later, we still have David Mattingly covers. We are a believer in continuity, but we're also a believer in keeping the good stuff alive. So, Ben, what was your first Baen book that you read?
The first one that was really memorable was Mike Flynn's In the Country of the Blind.
Oh yeah, that was fairly late. That was in the 90s, I think. Maybe 90 or 89.
Yeah, because that book took the world by storm. Effectively, its working title should have been Foundation and Illuminati. Because that's the book it was, and nobody had heard of it, and suddenly a couple of fans picked it up, and it fell less than it fell about 2 weeks short of being on the Hugo ballot that year, because basically, as fast as you could get a copy, read it, and nominate it, it was just absolutely springing forward.
And that was the first novel. We started out publishing science fiction, non-fiction computer books. We published computer games for a while. Jim Baen did the first Pride and Prejudice role-playing or computer game. Yes, it's super awesome. He himself wrote programs. He wrote a keyboard program, and we published an I Ching program. We published Jerry Cornell's computer books. But what we found where the money was the science fiction and the fantasy, and that's what we ended up concentrating on and developing the brand around. So for a long time, where the money was, and this was in the 80s when you had mall bookstores, when you had bookstores. Remember that? So mass market is where the money was, and again, we go back to Jody Lynn Nye establishing the mass market for science fiction. So this was an original paperback, right? And most of our books were original paperbacks at the time. The Magazine Wars that we did with Larry Niven, the series set in known space, those were all original paperbacks. David Weber's first books, original paperbacks. It was only as we started getting into the 90s that we started doing hardcovers, and that was after pocket books had been acquired by Simon & Schuster. That's very much inside publishing baseball. But Bill, what was the first Baen book that you remember reading?
Probably one of David's.
What a David. All right, so this is we are the house of Davids, okay? There are so many Davids here. You must specify.
All right, I believe when he started putting slammers out.
Dave Drake, yeah.
Dave Drake, slammers were some of the first in that. I actually got involved with Jim and working with him because of David.
Yeah.
Because I worked with Mayfair Games and I was their sales manager. I'm a founder
And
designer, and Aaron, there weren't many of us. My job was liaison with ACE, so ACE had me putting together projects and stuff, and I did one called The Fleet, but they said you're not big enough to a name to be the editor on a major series featuring Paul Anderson, Gordon Dixon, and all
Right.
these
Okay,
people.
these are ACE books.
This is ACE. And so they said you can work with David Drake, and while I was working with David, says, David, Bill, you know, we ought to be working with Jim too. And that's how I ended up coming up over to the office on 25th Street there. Or was it
28, it was 28.
28?
Yeah, they were between 28th and 29th on Fifth Avenue in an office about the size of that bay. I'm not kidding. It's actually probably larger than what the offices were.
With the investor down the hall at the end,
Yes.
watching what everybody was doing.
We did not have a copy machine. The Gallon had a copy machine.
Yeah.
It was the copy machine for us. It was for the other publishing company that he had founded that was in the front office. We were in the back office, but we got the windows. But we had to go through their office just to get to our office. It was small, and it was like that for the first, 7 years, I guess, before we moved up to before we moved up to Riverdale. Our first book storage, we did not have room for it, and it was in Carol Russo's closet. Carol Russo has been our cover designer for 40 years. Did covers at Ace, did covers at Tor, and still and did for a very, very long time. Worked for many companies in New York. When you think of what a science fiction cover looks like, it is because Carol Russo designed that. She designed these. And she did it by hand at that point. She has since moved over to computer design. So she was designing covers for us, and she had a bigger closet than we did. So our books were stored a few blocks down Fifth Avenue in New York.
There was a whole lot of ad lib in the business in those days.
There was, and it was fun, right? It was great. Yeah.
It was amazing. New things happened all the time. These World came out, and Heroes in Hell, and all that.
Yeah.
And it was different, and it was so much fun because it was different.
It was, yeah. I mean, Jim invented the shared world. Jim published these. Well, I don't know if he invented, but he published the first shared world at Ace.
Encouraged.
Yeah, and now, we are at the point where it's, well, of course you open your world to other writers. Why would you not do that? Well, because nobody did it before Jim did it.
There were several innovations that made my first major project. I did some smaller books, but the first major project I had with Jim was Jim and I sitting around one day going, well, we got to make more money. How do we attract some more big name authors?
Right? Yeah.
And I go, they're all contracted up. And he goes, well, there's got to be a way around that. And then dinner, lunch ended, and we both thought about it for a while. And I was working with Del Rey doing the Guide to Perm that Jody wrote, and working with Anne McCaffrey. And Anna was complaining that she was locked into all these Del Rey contracts, and they didn't give her any room to do the other series or the sequels she wanted to. And I went, oh, really?
I have a solution to that problem.
Well, actually, no. She promised Jody Lynn that while Jody Lynn lived, she would never publish with anyone
She would
else.
publish her solo books with anyone else.
We did not kill Jody Lynn Nye.
But what wasn't excluded or given in that was her collaborations. And we went, so if you get collaborations in your already established New York Times best-selling worlds, Perm was out because that was promised to Judy, like the Ship Who books, we could do it. So then Jim said, well, let's sit down and see if we can get some promising young authors that we can help promote through Jim. So we just got a few new people, one Jody, and this other one from Texas,
Elizabeth Moon.
And then finally this up-and-coming gal doing some strange fantasy things named Mercedes Lackey. And asked if they'd like to work with Anne McCaffrey so I could underpay them badly.
And we are still using this strategy, and we are still publishing Shaku books. We've just signed a contract for new books from Jody Lynn Nye and Misty Lackey writing with Veronica Guerre in the Shaku series. So yeah, very
After
excited.
20-year lapse, we have sequels.
You can't rush these things.
You come back more often than Doctor Who.
Never mind, not going there. All right. So Jody, what was your first name? Do you remember what that was?
That I read?
Yeah.
I'm thinking it was one of an Elsprite de Camp book.
Oh yeah. So that was me.
Less Darkness Fall?
We did reprint Less Darkness Fall, but the first DeCamp book that we rewrote was the complete Enchanter.
Yes.
Yes.
I love those. I love
Yes,
Carol Channing.
and I was the one who pointed out to Jim, it's like, everybody loves this series, but they've never actually been all put together in one volume, so we can do the complete Incomplete Enchanter. And so we did, and it did very nicely, thank you very much. And that was when Sprague was still alive, so.
Yes.
So we got to get him money.
We read that we also got to have him at some of the Baen dinners.
Yes.
Which was enormous fun.
There
Oh
were,
my God.
Jim used to throw these amazing dinners at conventions where all the Baen authors would come. He still do it on occasion.
Every now and then.
But we used to do them, and for me, who was back at the age in particular doing it, I had two jobs. I had to do the physical arrangements for Jim almost from the beginning for some reason. And like, Bill, why don't you set this up? And the second part was that I got to sit with all of these people. And with Sprague, who was across from Sprague when they were?
Oh, she was next to it. It was Margaret Ball.
It was Margaret Ball, right.
Hilarious.
They were. You ever see two authors macho on something? These two are linguists, and they were throwing languages at each other, trying to find one the other didn't know.
So they're sitting there chatting away in Swahili.
That's one that they found that they had in common, which I think is just amazing.
With the rest of us suddenly going silent.
Yeah, I'm just gonna eat my salad now. It'll be fine. All right, so let's delve into the time capsule. We did tote bags for a while. Anybody remember the tote bags? They were great. Let's see. Royal Manticoran Navy. Oh yeah. So Honor Harrington came to us because David Weber is the brother of a fan named Mike Weber, and you know Mike?
Yes, and we were so happy that you finally published him because we were getting very tired of going, my brother is over at Baen and they say that they're going to publish it for years. That's all we heard. It's going to publish it any day now.
And I was like, I don't know this guy David, but I know Mike, and he writes pretty well, so sure, I'll read it. And I brought it down. I was a lowly editor at the time. And I brought it to Jim, and I'm like, I think this is actually kind of fun. We should do this. And Jim was like, oh yeah, hell yeah.
Side note: Mike was married to Sue Phillips, the head of Sci-Fi fiction tracking.
Yes. Science fiction is a very, very small world. So the brotherly connection got him to read. It didn't get him the contract, right? His own merit got him the contract. And Insurrection was the first book that we had. It was a collaboration with Steve White, awesome Steve White, and that was set in the Starfire gaming universe. They've been dicked around by another publisher I shall not name. Make it bigger, make it smaller, make it bigger, make it smaller. And finally, David is like, just listen to his brother and said, just send it to Baen. I got you in hand. And so so now we have millions of books, New York Times bestsellers, and the Royal Manticoran Navy, which is a fan group that is awesome for the Honor Harrington. All right, let's see what else we have in here. Very old promo material where we could not afford 4-color printing. So we have the gaudiest 2-color combination you can imagine. This is
Fuchsia.
What we were printing in these days, this is literally just after the hot wax layout for books. which costs only 60% of a 4-color.
No, this is true. Right? So this was November 1993. It was a sharp end. It was, I think, book 5 in the Hammer Slammer series. So Jim had published the Hammer Slammer stories, first at Galaxy, then at Ace, and then Ace stupidly let it go out of print and we snapped it up. You will see that as a theme for him. Eventually, we published everything, I think, that Dave ever wrote. And for a while, Tor and I were tossing the books back and forth. Tor would let it go out of print, we'd do an edition, we'd let it go out of print, Tor would bring it back. And that worked very well for Dave. He enjoyed the money from that. But military science fiction was important to Jim. And especially in the post-Vietnam era, there was a lot of negativity towards soldiers and towards veterans. And the kind of science fiction that he published changed the culture. And it was an important thing to do. So, well done, Jim, or Jim as may be. All right, let's see. All right, another thing that was important to Jim Baen, we had cheesy trucker hats with logos that say, "Alone in the fight against encryption."
Jim and I talked a lot about ebooks back in the 80s, and when there were, you probably don't remember, 7 or 8 ebook companies that came and went and failed miserably. And Jim always went, that's because they were encrypted to death, and it took you 10 minutes to get into the chapter. And if your computer burped, you lost the book. And he said, they'll sell books. Ebooks will sell books. And at the time he was bringing them out, it was, I can sell hardcovers by releasing the ebook. And he kept the stats, and he was the first one really to do it. And him and Tom Doherty discussed it a lot. And he found that if he released the ebook as a preview, he sold more hardcovers. And it actually worked. And he became very adamant on making ebooks available to people, making them unencrypted, and trusting fandom in his readership. And it paid off. It really, Toni, you can go on to that.
Well, I mean, the mantra was don't treat your customers like thieves and they won't act like them, right? He knew and saw, partly from the Baen's Bar forum on Bix. Anybody remember Bix? Anybody old enough, other than Ben? Sorry. Yeah, we got one. Yeah. So the Byte Information Exchange. Byte was a computer magazine. Jared Cornell had a column there, very popular. And he had a topic on the early social media of the time, the bulletin boards. And Jim took to that like a fish to water. He eventually, he spun off his topic on Jerry's topic, called it Baen's Bar, and then we eventually financed our own platform for discussion of books and recipes and other things. So Baen's Bar is still in existence. It is not owned by Baen, it's owned by the readers. And we're very happy to keep it going. What was I saying about this? Oh, on encryption. So yeah. Part of the whole understanding what ebooks were was listening to the readers on these exchanges and saying, we know that this is going to be a big market. If we don't provide it, they will just steal it. It's too easy not to, right? We have copiers, we have scanners. They were rudimentary at the time, but you know what science fiction fans are like, right? So if we make it available for sale, then they won't have to become thieves. We will not have to turn them into thieves. And then there was a little while figuring out what the proper price point was. And Amazon was watching. We know Amazon was watching because we saw what it was that they did. We are the only publisher that when we started distributing on Amazon, and it took a while, we had to raise our ebook prices. Amazon was convinced, yes, Baen is doing it right. And we did. So
you innovated. Baen innovated in so many ways.
We did. And one of the ways that Jim trained people to get used to ebooks was we did ebooks. We gave away ebooks on a CD that were bound in different. Yeah, you guys love it, right?
We used to bind them into the back of the hardcovers.
People ask me, why don't we have the giant, free ebook CDs anymore? It's like, because you people buy ebooks, right? We don't need to train you to do that anymore. We don't need to convince you this is a format that you should be interested in. So.
And
Just to get the CD.
I do too, because I was sitting in Birmingham waiting for David Libbert to start signing, and we had one in like book 7 of the Honor Harrington series, right? Which is a hard sell for somebody who's just starting out. But I saw in a Books A Million there, somebody pick it up, look and go, oh, all the rest of the series is here, I will take the chance. I will buy the $20 hardcover as it was at the time. And I'm like, oh, this shit works, okay.
now, you have to understand on Bix, there was attitude.
Oh yeah, well I think they got that right. these are computer forums,
Well, even that, and the participants. You had a party you saw Jim and Jerry challenging each other. Remember?
Right, Jerry Cornell.
Yes,
Jerry Cornell.
Jerry Cornell, that was the Baen Hugo party. I don't know if it was the Baen Losers Party or the Baen Winners Party, because I think I
Never knew which year.
We just always had a party.
Right.
Your Lois was up.
Well, if Lois was up, then it was probably a winner's party.
Right. In that case, yeah, the two of them were having a discussion, Jim and Jerry Cornell. Adamant discussion about which one of them was more politically incorrect, and they both wanted the title.
That's just everybody gets a participation trophy here, right? So, all right, let's see what else we got. We have a John Ringo related. Not just a bun bun, it's a Christmas bun bun. Yes, it is.
If you don't know, you don't want to ask.
You probably don't, yes. Speaking of Baen parties, we did do parties. We used to go to WorldCon. Now we don't, because DragonCon is more fun. And we would get people would help us out. They would help us setting up the parties and
Red shirt.
yes. So this was one of the shirts that we produced for people who helped us out and people who were Tuckerized in novels. So in the front it's a Baen logo and it says, "I was Tuckerized in a Baen book and all I got was this red shirt," and on the back, yeah. Does anybody not know what Tuckerized means? Yeah. Okay. So there's a story. There is an author, also came Wilson Bob Tucker. Yes, Wilson Bob Tucker. He wrote as Wilson Tucker, but he was known to his friends as Bob. Although Robert was never part of his name; it was a nickname. Wilson Tucker, he was a fan. He was also a hysterically funny writer.
And one of the best people ever on the planet.
He absolutely was. He was integral in the creation of science fiction fandom, but he was also a very good writer. He wrote about half and half mysteries in science fiction, and in his mysteries in science fiction, he would put the names of his friends because he could. Oh yeah. You want to? All right. So explain what. Yeah.
He was watching Bob in action was always something to behold. There was a special fund that brought him to the WorldCon in Australia in 1975. Now, this was the first time the WorldCon had ever been in Australia. There were about fewer than 10% of the people who were there had ever been to a WorldCon before or had any contact with fandom. And since Tucker was there as a special guest, they kept on asking him. They knew he was one of the major figures in fandom, kept on asking him about the history of fandom, and he would tell them stories and explain all about the history of fandom. You know, that this had been invented 40 years ago, that he was making it all up on the spot. And
you would call him a bullshit artist now.
We would get these bouncy young Australian fans coming up and saying, "I just heard about this long-standing fans tradition and we would all say, "Oh, you've been talking to Tucker again, haven't you?"
He would sign books as Jules Verne, too. So all right, so the Tuckerization is when you put your friends into books, right? Tucker didn't always actually use the descriptions of his friends, he would just use their names. And it took off, right? It became something that was a long part of science fiction tradition. And to the point where you will get charity auctions for the opportunity to be Tuckerized in somebody's books, Jody's books, for instance.
And then a second auction for the right to kill or not kill that person.
That's
Right.
That's a Weber Tuckerization.
Yeah, I mean, with a Ringo Tuckerization, you know you're just going to die. So you didn't die? Oh, good for you. You haven't died yet. All right, Vixen Slayer. Oh, that's an old one. That was Misty Lackey brought Rosemary Edgehill into the Baen family, and we published a novel by her.
Speaking of being Tuckerized, Fallen Angels, which came from Baen, Niven Cornell and Mike Flynn. Niven and Cornell decided that I needed to be Tuckerized there, but Mike was writing the scene, at which point they told Mike, Ben goes to Fanaclass meetings, which are a club in New York, and suddenly this author who very early in his career, almost nobody had ever heard of, shows up at a Fanaclass meeting, taking notes, so the description of Benjamin Orange in...
Get it? Not yellow, orange. Yeah. It's Sunday, you need to explain this stuff.
In the book would be correct. So everybody was saying, who is this guy Mike Flynn? And fortunately, we could say, yeah, he's written these here, read this. And hand him in The Country of the Blind.
And Fallen Angels remains one of my favorite books. It is a great hard science fiction book. I learned about outgassing in Fallen Angels, and this is a problem with spacecraft, right? They're not all, there's a little bit of permeability to everything.
Even steel outgases.
Everything does.
It's a marvelous book, and basically most of Lospus and New York fandom ended up being Tuckerized in that book.
Yes.
Larry and Jerry were dealing with the Lospus end, and Mike Flynn was dealing with the East Coast end.
There was an era of the great Tuckerizations. Flying Sorcerer. Ron during that period did one where he killed off Harlan and rolling him in a rubber blanket and suffocating him, and the hero was the great scientist as a color of purple gray.
As a shade of purple gray.
Asimov. And the whole book was, he got Silverberg as a Pappas, and it was great.
Again, not a Baen book. So.
No. Anyhow, going on to that.
No. Here. All right. So for a while, we could send these shelf cards to bookstores. Remember bookstores? And to highlight series that we thought should be highlighted. And they would actually put them out. So this one was for Lois McMaster Bujold, too long to put on the shelf card. So even though Lois is very proud of the McMaster part of her heritage, she became Lois Bujold for the shelf card. Again, note the lovely colors, okay? You may not appreciate the aesthetics of this, but you will notice this as you walk by. Jim was very good at making you look. So the Fawcett Adventures, multiple Hugo and Nebula Award-winning series, which if you guys have not yet read yeah, okay, you have. All right, so you know. She's writing a fantasy series now about a new character, a guy named Penric, which are just loads of fun. Have you been reading those, Jody?
I haven't had a chance to yet. They're on our shelf.
Okay, well, Penric is awesome. He's just a lovely person to spend time with. Also, he has, 13 women in his head, one of which is a lioness, one of which is a horse. Yeah, one of which is a horse. So only Lois can pull this off. But she's doing them as novellas, and they're lovely too. But the Fawcett saga was just. It was the science fiction that jaded 20-year-old Toni Weisskopf, fresh out of Oberlin College, was like, nothing good is coming out in science fiction. It's all crap. It's all politically correct. This was in the 80s, right? So like, it's all terrible. And Jim was like, shut up, read Lois. And I'm like, oh, all right, never mind. I found out that you could have the kind of stuff you like, that it would be new and fresh and talking about things that were of interest to me. But it still gave me the same feeling as a reader that I did when I read Heinlein or H.B. Piper or Jack Vance, and that's sort of what we've tried to continue to do at Baen, is write the kind of stories that are stirring and fun and intellectually stimulating and don't make you want to slit your wrists after you've read it. So here's an example, another marketing tool that we have. What is that one from? Yes, this is the sales catalog from 2011. Let's see, who do we have there? Let's see. David Weber, okay. Here we go, here's the...
There we go. Eric Flint, Tom Bradman, Eric Flint, Paul Anderson, Sharon and Lee, Steve.
Sharon Lee, Steve Miller, yeah.
Sharon Lee, Steve Miller. Yeah. Beautiful Dream by somebody over there. Paul Sheffy, Tom Kratman again, and reprint from Heinlein, and reprint from Chris Ample.
There we go. All right. I mean, this is from 2011. It's 15 years later, and a lot of these people are still writing with us and for us and doing great stuff. PC Hodgel is still writing for us. She's writing very slowly, but she's still writing. Tom Kratman has a book up for a Dragon Award. Hopefully he'll take it home. We'll find out this afternoon. And he's doing a great alternate history with Casey Zell and Justin Watson now about that I think Jim would have loved. It's what do you need? What single thing in history needs to change to make it so the Bolsheviks don't win? Right? We get a world without communism. This is your alternate history. How do we get that? And I think Jim would have been, 100% behind that. Also, it has side characters who are my great-grandfather and great-grandmother, so who were in fact anti-communists in Russia and Lithuania.
Tuckerization has no age limit.
I don't know if that's Tuckerization because they were actual historical characters, right? So they're playing themselves. They did have giant red shirt targets on them, however, which is why we're here, why I'm here, and not in Russia dead. So,
we're talking about the art on this, and you're looking at pictures and how distinctive Baen covers have become. Jim loved.
You want to pass that?
Jim loved to experiment with covers and to try innovative things. Sometimes he got a little carried away. Jody, remember the one cover with the metallic? Hey, metallic lettering is good, so let's do this new series from Jody and make the covers
Foiled.
all of them. Every inch of the cover was foiled.
Except my name.
It makes it pop.
You can comb your hair in it, but you couldn't tell what the picture was.
That may have been the intent on that. But yeah, no, Jim again very much understood what it is that catches your eye, and we are magpies. Shiny, glittery things catch our eyes. So embossing, that's what embossing was for. All the artists hated the embossing. They tried to paint for it. They wanted to know, is my cover going to be embossed before they did the painting, so they could take that into account. That works sometimes and sometimes doesn't work. But yeah, Jim had a stable of artists that he worked with. We talked about David Mattingly, Larry Elmore was one very early on. Tom Kidd is another one who started out with us at the very beginning, and who's still doing beautiful, beautiful works of art for us, especially in the 1632 series. But he also does great military science fiction art. We do a lot of 1632 books. Jody's has just come out.
So exciting. It's the 37th in the Ring of Fire series, according to the box I received. And,
yeah, sure, that'll be great.
well, I actually counted.
1, 2, 3, many, yeah. But Tom did most of those covers. So the fact that he's still doing beautiful, great covers, 37 books into a series, is just a tribute to what a great artist he is. Yeah. And sometimes, not always, a book will not be finished before the cover art is finished. This has happened with
Especially with Eric.
Especially, well, it's not with Eric. The relationship, Eric was a terrible procrastinator, I want to say. Eric Flint was. And with most authors, you give them a deadline, and they understand there's a little bit of fluff in the schedule there, just in case. Eric would go around Jim's back, find out who the production manager was, find out what the real date to the printer was, and write to that date, which, we've gotten very good at doing instant books, which you're not supposed to be doing with fiction. But our team is good at that drill now, let me tell you. No, I shouldn't tell you that. Don't do that.
Maybe you have more time than we thought.
No, you don't.
I know the real drop dead date is a very well kept secret most of the time.
And my production managers and managing editor now are way too canny to fall for that shit. They were. But what would happen is that Eric would talk to Tom about what scene would be good for the cover. Jim would approve it, and then Eric would write that scene. However Tom did the art, that's what Eric would do. And it got to the point where they were doing the Grantville Gazette anthologies, where Tom would just do the painting, and then Eric would write the story to the painting. Yes. Oh, you laugh. So much fun.
Not to say that it doesn't still happen. When I received the Tom Kidd art, 2 characters are in the scene on the book that were not actually in the scene, so of course I had to get them there.
Yeah. And it's that kind of, this is what I mean when I'm talking about having fun, right? It's that interaction between the artist and the author.
And the publisher looking at you and saying, oh, you're partway done good, I just put it on the schedule. And so the art's being done while the book is being finished, when you get a reliable enough author.
When you get a reliable enough author, right? You can't do that with everybody. But you could with Dave Drake, you can with Jody. And there are authors that we will not do that with anymore. And we will wait to get finished book in hand. But there are some people who are like, we know they might be late, but they're going to get in and come hell or high water. And those are the people we like to work with. Let's see. I think we've got a little bit of time. Do we have any questions from the audience about or the panel?
I think one thing that you need to mention as probably the greatest marketing thing was the Baen Free Library.
Speaking of Eric, right? Getting back to the origins of Jim Baen, right? We talked about the first taste is free that he learned on getting people off of the sidewalk and into the folk clubs. There were other things being dealt on the streets of New York at that time as well. Not our problems. But as the rise, so we knew that lost leaders worked, right? For a while we did, before ebooks came up, we would do $1.99 editions or $3.99 editions of books that were the beginnings of series. We did some for Weber, we did some for other books to try to encourage readers to take take that leap, and they worked, right? They worked. Bookstores were not so excited about it because they made lower profit margin on it. So when ebooks came about, the free books became much easier to do, right? Because there's no bookstore. We were the retailer of the ebook. So if anybody was going to lose anything, it was going to be us, right? So we ran the experiment, and Eric Flint did a detailed analysis. He was the one. I think he was one of the first to volunteer. It's like, try with my books, right? Let's see. Does it affect my sales? And the answer was yes. It did affect his sales in a positive way.
Very positive.
If you want the detailed analysis of it, because Eric being Eric, it's called Prime Palaver. It's on the Baen website, and it goes through step by step with the numbers. This is why this works. And again, you will see now in indie publishing or with Amazon. There we go, 99 cents for 3 weeks, right? That loss leader approach. And so we have the Baen Free Library, which has about, I think, 40 books in it. Many of them are the first or second books in long-running series. That's intentional. And one of the other nice things about it is that if you don't like that first book, that's fine. You spent no money on it. You can go on maybe to, if you don't like the David Weber, maybe you'll try the Misty Lackey book there. And that will be the thing that that really turns you on. And then you buy, Misty Lackey's 20-book series, and that's fine too. Right? We don't care which one you fall for, but we're pretty sure that you're going to fall for at least one or two people in that free library. Yeah, thank you.
In the 50s and 60s, science fiction was always a bellwether. Was the see what happened with the Lamb in the front, a bellwether kind of thing. And Del Rey, primarily in the 50s and 60s to a degree, were the innovator of putting anything. Anne McCaffrey's White Dragon and Mickey Henry.
Well, in the 50s, it was Fred Pohl and Ian Ballantyne, right?
Yeah. In the 50s, and then Del Rey's. And then into the 80s, Baen Books, and since then, has been someone other companies watch. I have talked with people at other companies saying, yeah, we're watching how Baen's handling this to see, because they have, they're nimble, they're independent, and they can think out of the box a little, and sometimes suffer the consequences, but nonetheless, this is a comment from a non-employee. They have done the collaboration thing, started with Baen. The Shared World started with Jim, and was pushed by Baen. Many innovations on covers, on format, on sales, all started with Baen and got sort of picked up by the rest of the industry within a few years. And it's quite a reputation.
And some that haven't been picked up on are really Baen, like the e-arcs.
Yes.
The sale of e-arcs.
Yeah. Yes.
Yards and the monthly packages.
The monthly bundles. Yeah. Started with.
The key to a monthly bundle is it's priced so that if you want 2 hardcovers from that month, you're going to get 6 or 7 or 8 books. And as long as you've already got these books essentially for free, well, you can read them and say, oh gee, does this author have a backlist? Right. Toni smiles.
Well, it's a way to introduce new writers, right? You bought it for the Weber or the Lackey or the Nye, but oh, well, there's a Marisa Wolf, and that has a beautiful cover, also nominated for a Dragon Award, right? I'll read that too, since I have it already. And then you found a new beautiful author, Joelle Presby. It was a collaborator with David Weber while she was still deployed, I believe. Now she's retired from the Navy and has more time to write because now she's only, raising children. So
Different kind of combat.
right. So, but in the tradition of, right, it's, if you like David Weber, then you're also going to enjoy Joelle Presby's work. And you're going to be able to find new authors. And that's one of the things that establishing the brand was an important thing to Jim because it made it easier for new authors to find their footing. So you had a question? Yeah.
Yes, on the button. I've been getting mine for years.
Yeah.
But is there some sort of a theme you try to use to make it?
No. So there's no theme to our bundles. It's just what we happen to be publishing this month. You can't. Once the books are out in print, you can no longer buy the bundle. So there's a limited time availability from the time we announce the books to when the books are in print that you can get them. Once you've bought them, then you have access to them as long as our servers are not nuked, right? So we do encourage people with your ebooks, don't rely on our servers, download it to yours, right? You own it, you store it. So, but if you don't, our servers haven't been nuked yet, so you're fine so far. I'm looking at Philip Cornell. He would know when people's servers get nuked. Other questions? Yeah, sir.
Was there ever any experimentation for interactive fiction? So you have a long
Was there?
computer program, computer games like the Infocom?
Yeah. All right. So the answer is yes. There was. Was there any experimentation with interactive fiction, hyperfiction, hypertext? And so yes, we did do an experiment with that. Mark Stigler was the author for that. He's an amazing technologist and futurist. Wrote one of my favorite science fiction stories ever, The Gentle Seduction, which is about the glories of the future. And if you haven't read it yet, you should. And he was all about that. And it was it was like it was still the 90s, right? It was before ebooks had taken off. Really. We started publishing our ebooks in '99, and this was before then. We were still on Fifth Avenue in New York, right? Anyway, but so yes, we did try it. No, it didn't work. That's not how people's brains work. Not when they're reading fiction. Yeah.
For other companies, Tor and Ace, I did co-packager. I did over 40 chosen path adventures.
Right.
And they sold like hotcakes until Activision came out with the handheld. And the market literally died within a week. We never sold another book, as far as I can tell.
Well, there is nostalgia for those things now. I've seen some booktubers talking about the Chuchi. Have you not seen that yet? Yeah, you've seen it. So, but again, not Baen. So, you and then Swordman.
There's a pretty big subgenre of visual novel, which is a lot of times what that is just taking role. As a talking about visuals, normally it's more big on audio track than they have routing. Japan has, they definitely started out with the erotic side of the genre. But eventually a couple people started going like, well, what if I want to do this because I want to make money and then write a good story, and then slowly they move all that out, and you kind of have like good stories, stuff like the Team Strike games, for instance, are kind of a halfway in between of the two genres. And I mean,
Yeah.
it is a thing. It's a completely different genre. I'm not saying get into it, but I'm saying
Yeah.
it is a market for it. It's doing pretty well.
I think now is more the time where people are more accepting of mixing their streams, right?
Yeah.
Is it a game? Is it artwork? Is it a graphic novel? Is it a novel? We don't care. We're just having fun, right? So I think there's more openness to that. Sort of personal.
Yeah. So there's always things that come up in what one might call speculative fiction that then penetrates into the mainstream. Like at one point, there's a Game of Thrones. Like low fantasy was big, steampunk was huge for a while. So, what do you think is the big thing right now? What do you think is going to be the big thing, say, next year?
If we do that, we'd be richer.
I like the way you said richer. Right?
I'm talking to a publisher.
Yeah.
Looking around DragonCon right now, it seems like Vikings is the big thing.
And we are certainly hoping it is Vikings, yes. All right, so submissions do come in waves, right? We had a wave of great hard science fiction a couple of years ago, and Joelle's book came out, and Rob Hanson's first solo book for Baen came out. We just had some great speculative hard science fiction. And we got a wave of great fantasy, and we're seeing great fantasy series playing themselves out in Baen's list now. Howard Andrew Jones is, if you like Robert E. Howard, if you like Drake's Roman stories, Sword and Sandals, Chronicles of Canterbury is for you. Great stuff. Greg Frost is doing an also fun but very dark fantasy series. So we're reflecting what the people are sending to us. So in a sense, we're a little bit behind that. So I'm not really sure what the next great wave is, but I do hope it is spiking fiction. That would be super awesome. All right, person behind Marisa. Yes.
So with the kind of rising prevalence of generative images in AI,
Yeah.
you guys are talking a lot about like continuity.
Yeah.
How are you guys going to handle how easy it is to generate those images cheaply with kind of maintaining the artistry and
We have a street team of people who just go out and assassinate people who steal artwork. So. No, that's not true. Don't tell people that. Shh.
It's not external, it's an internal team.
So yeah, how people are going to deal with quote unquote AI? It is artificial. It's not intelligence, right? Generative text programs and generative art programs are different things. How the creators ride that wave out is going to be interesting to play. What I've been thinking of is essentially a Turing test, right? Especially for the fiction. If you can't tell that it's been written by a program and not a person, then you can't tell if it's been written by a program or a person, right? With the artwork, it's less of a gray area, right? The programs were stealing artwork, they were using it without compensating the artists, and they should be sued all to hell. And the suit, I believe, is going forward that they have now, not for the right reasons, but it's going forward. Hopefully, the bottom line is creators must be paid, or they will stop creating, right? So we as a legal framework need to figure out how to pay the creators who are the bottom line of these generative programs.
You have to understand, this is a long tradition. The AI, the intellectual property, goes back to the Google decision to copy everybody's book and post them for free.
Yes.
And approaching massive libraries saying, we're going to copy every book you have for you free, and then we're just going to give them away to everyone in the universe.
Yes.
And
well, it was in a library, therefore, fine. No. Well, at least, right. So the American legal system actually did the right thing for the right reason with the Google
after 3
decision.
years.
Yes.
You stopped them dead.
Yeah. All right. I think we have time for one more question. I can talk to Beth Ann anytime. Yeah.
I'm actually wondering, you mentioned that there were some of the experiments that had negative.
All right. So, all right. I have one here. Does anybody here remember Planet Baen? Planet Baen. Oh, bless you. One of the few, the proud, the many. Right. So this was when Angry Birds. Right. It was like stupid ass games can go viral. We can do that. Well, no. So we created a computer game, and it was kind of fun. And the goal of the computer game was to give away books, right? But it turned out to be a very complicated way to give away books, and you don't need that complicated way to give away books. They'll just send you their email address, and that's it. So, all right, we will end on.
I have one ending.
All right, one more.
Beth Ann there, whom she just referred to, works with the 1632 group and 1632 and Beyond magazine. Any of you interested in writing, they're looking for new writers to do stories in the 1632 universe. And she has flyers giving away first copies of the magazine, and she has cards for people who like to write for them or actually soliciting you. We pay 5 cents a word, therefore we qualify you for software even.
And amazingly not a Baen book. All right, so on that note, thank you guys for coming. We love you.
Thank you.